Hi, I'm Sarah Smith, and I want to tell you guys about something that's happening in Las Cruces. If you live in Las Cruces, you're going to want to know about this. So right now, the city is in the process of updating the zoning code. Now, that sounds really boring, but the zoning code is really what allows different things to happen in different parts of the city, in different neighborhoods, that kind of thing. So when they are updating this, it has the potential to impact everybody who lives in Las Cruces, everybody who works in Las Cruces. They are not planning to actually approve the new code until this fall. There's a bunch of steps between now and then, but right now they are open to comment on their draft that they have. And I want to tell you what's going on with that. So I'm going to share my screen real quick and show you. This is actually the document that I'm talking about, and it's a really long 400-page document that tells about all the different changes that they're making in the zoning code. So I want to tell you about some of the specific changes that are in here so that if you are concerned about this, you can go and leave a comment on the city's website to let them know what you think about it. So let me show you a couple things that are in the code. Now, one thing that's really interesting and different is that they are changing it so that there's no longer going to be any such thing as a single-family residential area. Right now, most of the neighborhoods in Las Cruces are single-family residential zones, and that means only homes can be built in those areas. But they are changing that to get rid of that. So if you look on here, you can see they are changing all of the residential areas. They're going to be now called neighborhood zones. There's 3 different types: NH1, NH2, and NH3. The difference between those 3 different types is basically how dense the homes and the businesses and everything are in those areas. But look and see, you can see here NH1, NH2, and NH3, all of them now will allow any combination of homes, apartments, townhouses, and mobile homes. So no longer will there be any zones in Las Cruces that only allow single-family homes. So that's a pretty big change. And they are also going to be changing it so that businesses are allowed in those areas as well. I want to show you some of those. All right, here we go. So you can see again here, we've got columns for NH1, NH2, and NH3. And you can see they're allowing, for instance, grocery stores are allowed in all of those zones, although in NH1 zone, they have to get a special use permit, but that's a process that a business can go through to get permission to build in that area. They're also allowing retail stores in those neighborhood areas. And then one that's pretty interesting that a lot of people might be interested in is the bars. And they are allowed in NH2 and NH3, just allowed. And in NH1 zone, they are allowed with a special use permit. So that means you could potentially be having bars in your neighborhood. I want to show you real quick before I keep going on here what the actual zone map looks like now with this proposed plan. So here's a map of Las Cruces, and I'm going to zoom in just a little so you can kind of see what's going on here and kind of find your area of town. And based on that, you can see, so all these yellow areas are the NH1 neighborhood zones. And this light orange color is going to be the NH2 neighborhoods. And then there's a brown color that typically more rural areas, those are the NH3. So when you look on this map, you can find where you are in town and see roughly where you're going to be zoned. Now, there's another big change as far as what's allowed in those areas. And this is one I think a lot of people are going to be interested in. Cannabis. So unlike bars, which actually had the requirement for a special use permit to be in an NH1 neighborhood district, cannabis dispensaries are allowed in all the neighborhood districts with this new zoning code. One thing I'm not quite clear on yet is whether there would still be any buffer required. I'm waiting for a reply back from the community development office on that. The guy who's answering my questions is out this week and he doesn't have access to his documents. So he's going to let me know next week. But for sure, what we know from this right here is that cannabis dispensaries are going to be allowed in all of the neighborhood areas. And I think there's already a lot of concern from a lot of people who live here that there are cannabis dispensaries popping up everywhere. There's so many of them. There's over 100 permits that the city has already given so far. So this has the potential to allow even more of that to be going on. You can see also other types of cannabis businesses that are going to be allowed in those different zones as well. And this is something that if you care about it, you need to go and make a comment on the city's website. Now, there's one other area that I can tell you about, which is parking. And there are some pretty big changes with the parking rules in this document. They have reduced for a lot of businesses the minimum number of parking places that are required. And combined with that, they have added in a cap on the maximum number of parking places that will be allowed for businesses. So if you have a business, for instance, that it has an allowance of a minimum of 20 parking places or less, the maximum you're allowed to have is 50% more than that. So you'd be up to no more than 150% total parking places. If you want to see a little bit about where those numbers will come from, let me go back into here. You can see on this same chart, it tells you how many parking places are required per square foot of the business, right? So that's where that initial number is going to come from. This is the minimum allowed. And then again, if you have a number that gets calculated here that is 20 or less, the most parking places that you will be allowed to have is 50% more than that. Now, if you have a bigger business that calculates out as anything over 20, so 21 even, the most parking places you'll be allowed to have is 10% over. So if you calculate out for your business that you could have 21 parking places, the most you can have is 23, because that's another 10% added on. So that's a pretty big change, and that might impact some businesses. It seems to me that businesses should have the leeway to determine if they need more parking than that or not, and then build the parking lots accordingly. Now, they are going to grandfather in businesses that are already existing as far as their parking lots, so there's not really a concern for things that are already in place, but this is going to be a concern for anything new that's being built in the city. So those are the big changes that I've noticed. Again, this is a 400-page document. There's a lot more details in there, but those are the things that seem to me like they might be of the most importance to people in the city. So if you are concerned about this, you need to go and leave a comment. And I'm going to show you real quick what that will look like. There's going to be a link in the chat below this. And when you go to the link, you will end up on a page that looks like this. You want to click on this number 3 that says zoning regulations. And then once you click there, you will end up on this form right here. And that's where you can type in your comment and tell them what you're concerned about. I have put together some potential talking points that you could use as a starting point on that if you want to. I'll have the link to where those are in the chat below as well. And let me know if you need any more information about this. I think this is a pretty important thing that's going to really direct how the city goes from here on out. They haven't updated this code in, I guess, 20 years or so. So if you consider that it may be in place for this similar amount of time, you're looking at the next 20 years of Las Cruces and the direction of the city. So now is our chance to give input to the city if we don't like the way that this is looking. Please go through the links down below, and thanks for taking action. Bye.